Greetings, everyone. I'm back. I wanted to do another short video as a part two to the video I did the other day about or regarding the identity of Cleopatra. So I did a video the other day regarding the identity of Cleopatra, and you can go and check it out. It's a 10-minute video. The video really should have been shorter, maybe perhaps 1 minute. I could have said that, Cleopatra was white because the name Cleopatra is a white Greek name. Enough said, that was it, and just left it as that. However, to make my point and provide justification to that point, I provided examples to that. And so for this video, again, that'll be real brief. In me gathering that data or those examples to make my point, I wanted to further clarify on the point made about Cleopatra and why Cleopatra is white. So I gave two examples. However, the primary example that I want to focus on and clarify about was the one example I gave of Dr. Umar Johnson, aka Umar Ipatunde, and his efforts to create a school which he plans to name that school after Marcus Garvey and Frederick Douglass. Now, in using the examples, I made a point that the names of the ancestors are associated with white people. Now, when I made that point, there is no disrespect to those elders. Those elders, Marcus Garvey and Frederick Douglass, they should be acknowledged and studied for their contributions. And for those of you, for example, who have read my book, Afrocentric Pan-African Patara Set, The Power of God and Religion, I did just that. I mentioned the those ancestors and their contributions, particularly in the context of them being religious freedom fighters. And again, so my point in using that example to come to the conclusion about the identity of Cleopatra does not take away from honoring them. So I wanted to be clear about that. Also, purposely, I use terms such as white, black, white Arab, God, and there's a few others if you go into the video to emphasize um, a teaching and learning strategy towards changing the way we think regarding race concepts and religious concepts as well. In other words, and I'll put this in a simple way that's related to my field in counseling. So I use those terms to get you where I want to take you, if that makes sense. In other words, sometimes I have to meet you where you are at and take you to where I want you to go. So to further illustrate this point, one of the courses that I teach in the area or the field of counseling is human sexuality. In the course, as with any course too, you can sort of think of it in this way. There are a lot of terms associated with this. So in the context of human sexuality, there are a lot of different human sexuality terms. And I often share with students that many times when a student or a client comes in, they may use terms that's not anatomically correct. Thus, you have to work with them where they're at to get an understanding of what they mean by the terms that they know, and then teach them the correct terms. And so that idea is similar here in why I use those terms, because of what you may know or think you may know or don't know about race and religion. For example, many of you recall Asa Hilliard. He would almost always use the term African to refer to us. And this is what we sort of like, I say, need to return to or go back and look at and advance from in terms of our discourse of race, and even too in the course of our writing. Um, Oftentimes we need to make a distinction, of course, in the context of who we're talking about, or who we're referring to when we talk about African people, because of course, as African people, we're all over the world. So it may be easier to, particularly if we're talking about Africans in the context of the Americas, sometimes it's easier to say African American. However, though, that term has been in use, right, uh, since the 80s, to refer to us. However, to advance in how we grow and develop as a people, we have to get a better understanding of the idea of race moving forward. Um, as far as my last point that I really wanted to make as well, um, it doesn't. My claim and my point regarding Cleopatra doesn't mean that is the end all be all, or that we cannot raise any additional questions and seek answers about who is Cleopatra. You know, I was basically speaking to the claim and the justification for my claim using the Afrocentric Pan-African scientific method of research. However, that's another topic and something I plan to cover in another uh, book. However, I will briefly talk about it or briefly mention it here. And how I want to talk about that is that I have been fortunate to have traveled throughout the continent, and equally meet many African scholars, researchers, and teachers. And I must say, uh, some of those individuals are they're very genuine, and some are not. You know, I'll leave it as that. Um, and so I say that to say that I met the former. Well, I know several former presidents of the Association of Black Psychologists. However, I want to speak about this particular former past president, of the Association of Black Psychologists, Dr. Kevin Washington, or Dr. Kyrie Mwata. Really good brother, scholar, researcher, teacher. He and I met at the uh, annual National African Psychology Conference that's held at Florida A&M University each year, and we, stay in touch. And I was at another event in Florida where he was also at, and in speaking with him at that event, he brought to my attention how often we tend to argue from the same viewpoints as others, such as in this case with Cleopatra, and whether or not she was white or black, so to speak. And this is opposed to formulating our own arguments. So in a way, The Afrocentric Pan-African scientific method of research is about that. It's about the ability to make our own arguments and really even decide if we want to argue in the first place. And so, again, I will later expound on that through another writing, but also through another video because I have a couple other ideas that I want to discuss on YouTube. However, for the moment, thank you for listening to this brief video. And again, be on the lookout for other or future videos. Thank you.